My name is Richard Winfrey. I am a Black man. You can tell. Congratulations. I am a Black man in today's world. I am glad to be a member of not only Black Mental Wellness, the organization, but also proud member of my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And for the sake of this program, I want to say Happy Mental Health Awareness Month. So the purpose of this event is to give you all some tools to work with in terms of our Black male community. We know a lot of Black men in the world, some who we do or don't know how to connect with, and they may be going through some things we may not know anything about. So hopefully by the end of this program, you will have the tools you need to be able to engage with those fellow Black men. If you are one yourself, or you are an advocate for Black men in your community, men in general, but primarily Black. That's our priority here. So I want to go over the agenda with you all so you know what you're getting into, who you're going to get greetings from, and before we get into some somewhat laid back, but somewhat maybe even tough discussions around Black mental health and how you can start the journey for yourself and your Black male community. So first, we will have greetings from Black Mental Wellness. We will also have greetings on behalf of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated Midwest region. We will introduce our panelists, and we'll from there go into our Q&A. So we'll have a panel. Again, if you all have questions at any time, feel free, drop them in the chat. We will try to moderate and pick and answer questions as best of our abilities. We have a lot of qualified individuals, just either people that's been through some things or work in those professional spaces. So we do have a wide wealth of knowledge to help you all out as well. From there, there'll be a survey for you all to fill out. So please make sure before you leave that you fill out that survey. It's going to be very important for future events. A roadmap in terms of what's next from both and either Black Mental Wellness or Alpha, and finally closing. So with that, I would like to hand it off to Dr. Dana Cunningham, who is the co-founder of Black Mental Wellness.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our event this evening. I am, again, Dr. Dana Cunningham, the Vice President of Community Outreach and Engagement for Black Mental Wellness, and am so excited to have all of you here with us tonight. It's just a wonderful sea of Black men on my screen, and I love it. Everyone who is here to discuss and learn and listen and engage about the importance of mental health in Black men. Thank you to Richard, who has done a tremendous job organizing this panel. Appreciate you so much. Richard is one of our ambassadors for Black Mental Wellness, and our ambassadors are responsible for helping us create content, contribute to social media, plan events such as these, and Richard is just an amazing contributor to our organization. So thank you so much for all that you do. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Black Mental Wellness, I will drop our website in the chat in just a moment, but we are really dedicated to uplifting and focusing on mental health in the Black community and really helping to decrease stigma related to Black mental health in the Black community, having conversations such as these. We host an annual conference every year. We have lots of resources on our website. We have a book coming out at the end of the summer focusing on helping youth manage racial stress and trauma. So I will share our website, excuse me, in the chat box in just a moment. But thank you again to all of our panelists and all of you for joining us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Cunningham. Definitely one of the people that keep me on my toes when it comes to curating content, et cetera. So I'm grateful for you allowing me to help share this space. Next, I want to extend greetings. We'll ask one of my good brothers who is here and able to stand in many different spaces. I need him to. Our Midwestern Regional Director for Alpha Phi Alpha Midwest, Dr. Anthony Ferguson.
Greetings, everyone. Again, Dr. Anthony Ferguson. It is my privilege and honor to serve as Alpha Phi Alpha Midwestern Region's Executive Director. We are really excited about this partnership And we are excited about the conversation we're going to have this evening. Dr. Cunningham, your team, thank you so much for all of our panelists. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing your conversation around mental health and wellness. This is a space that I've existed in within the last about 6 years as a mental health counselor in the private space, but also in higher ed in the public space as well. And so I won't delay this any further. We've been building this partnership and the work around mental health and wellness within the Midwestern region for quite some time, certainly over the last 4 and 5 years. So again, thank you all for your time. Please ask questions. Please interact with our panelists. Looking forward to the discussion.
Definitely. Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. I just want to say that both these organizations definitely help at very crucial times in my life, whether I be in the college realms, which I was able to join Alpha Phi Alpha, and then as I kind of gained my own voice in terms of advocating for my own mental wellness, I said I want to be an ambassador for somebody else, and saw the application, got the interview last year, around this time last year actually, and May of last year, I was able to attend my first ambassador meeting for Black mental wellness. So for me, this is full circle. So if I sound like I am nostalgic right now, I am. I am very much so. But I'm going to try to keep it as concise and crisp as possible. But with that being said, I do want to give a chance to introduce the people that are going to be speaking with and to you over the next at least hour. But this is going to be good conversation. In the past, one of the reasons that we created this specific event is that I have always seen those one-off Black men mental health conversations. It's always been, oh, we need to have something like this. Then it happens. We need more of it. Then it disappears. So my goal is to have this as a kickoff to a series for this year in terms of conversations between Black men and mental wellness as we start the road to wellness for our fellow Black men. So hopefully we can create this as a pipeline for that, and this will be the beginning of that road. Again, my name is Richard. I am not a therapist or a licensed counselor or a coach or any of the things you may hear about tonight. I am simply a Black man who by trade is engineer by ways of the city of Detroit, born and raised. And because of my own experiences with mental health, mental illness, if you will, I decided to even play around and start a podcast about it and simply give Black men a space to talk about it. You may have heard about the Mental Matters podcast. If you have not, I implore you to go check it out. 5 years and running, I think that we are definitely catching some ears and having some major conversations. So wanted to give a quick little jab and boast for brag about that. But with that, I've had the opportunity to meet very, very great people. Either they've been on our podcast, either I've had conversations with them in passing in hallways at conferences, or simply asked to serve in leadership under some of their capacity and meet other dope young Black men. So we have a smorgasbord of great people here. We have at least, I want to count the actual panelists, we have 4 panelists that stepped up and said, hey, I'm willing to share my expertise, my story, etc. And I want to give them the shine, the opportunity to kind of give us who they are, where they're from, what they do. And I don't know, something fun about you, because we're all fun, right? So I am going to play popcorn, and I am going to start with Jude.
I didn't feel that was popcorn, but I'll start.
I like popcorn, I'm sorry.
All right, my name is Jude Bartholomew. I am a licensed massage therapist down in Tampa, Florida. I've been in the mental health field for at least since 2015. So I have a lot of experience, working and dealing with the field. I also have my own mental health dealings, such as anxiety and often depression, but just here to share my story and help out.
No doubt. Thank you, Joy, for being a part of it, bro. I appreciate you. Let's see. Next I see is Jordan.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jordan Young. I am an undergraduate student at Morehouse College, studying Chinese studies and psychology. Currently on a gap year So yeah, I started out as a engineering and physics major and went through a lot of challenges when I got down to campus after being in the 2020 class of high school and really just kind of being delayed in that experience I was getting at school, kind of feeling a little behind. And so I had a lot of challenges, but really just here to get my experience and kind of how I got to where I am today and why I'm happy where I am today and excited for what's to come.
Realize I'm on mute. Thank you, Jordan.
You're on mute, Richard.
It's still not working. Hopefully that works now. Jordan, thank you so much for sharing. Glad you're here with us. And I'm excited, dear, for you to share your story as well. Definitely have fun picking on my brothers here. Let's see. I'm gonna go next and go Caleb.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Caleb Boswell. I'm a college counselor and I'm also a therapist. So I'm on the college counseling faculty at a local community college here in the Detroit area. And then in the evening, I see clients through a clinic that I contract out of. Not only am I a therapist, but I also go to therapy. So I also say that by me having my experience in therapy and seeing my therapist, that makes me a more compassionate therapist. Because I understand what it's like to be on the other side of that couch. One of the things that I say about my clients, I call it double dutching, where it's like, I know you want to say something, but you kind of going back and forth if you want to jump in and say it. And so, like I say, by me being in therapy, it just makes me more compassionate. I feel like it makes me a better therapist because I recognize some of the struggles of what it's like to be on the other side of that couch.
Most definitely. I would definitely say some of my earlier times, if you will, I definitely reached out to Brother Boswell at times and he was able to quickly give me some advice. And I'm like, how do you know all this stuff? And I found out not only was he going to therapy, but also he was definitely in the ranks of transitioning throughout his career as a therapist. And I'm like, oh, cool, appreciate you. Cool. That was free. I had to pay for it. But thank you for that. Thank you for joining me again for this. Gabriel.
Good evening, peace and love, family. My name is Gabriel Gaius Biode. I'm a Yoruba brother born in Alabama, raised in Columbus, Ohio. Graduated from the University of Dayton with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering, attempting to pursue my graduate degree at mechanical engineering at Howard University. I'm an engineer by trade and passion. I'm currently an educator at Anacostia High School in physics and forensic science, as well as the funnest fact about me is I'm an author, publishing my debut poetry book May 23rd, titled When You Get Older. And I feel like my poetry aspect has helped me with the therapeutic needs and necessities of me just being a human being, as well as, of course, being a Black man fundamentally, and another thing in passion. So I'm here to help with, I guess, just be another shoulder to lean on, as well as just a support system for our brothers in this room, as well as our sisters who also can learn and take from our experience. So yeah, peace and love, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Gabriel, for joining us. I also would like to be very, very observant and I really love that jacket you have on, but I'm also very biased. So excuse my biasness.
Forgot to mention, brother of Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated, cross undergrad, spring 19. Thank you.
Respect. I am not going to say when I crossed because that was a long time ago, but also Caleb might beat me up for saying it's been a long time ago. So moving on. We also have another brother on the spotlight. I want to give him a quick shout out. He is part of the reason we are having this said event because I ran with the idea and he was just like, oh yeah, do it. So I want to give you just a quick few seconds, Brother Whiteside, if you could just give a quick intro, who you are, what you do, and finally, what role do you play in all this? What do you do?
Sure. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Michael Whiteside. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I'm a licensed therapist by trade. I work for Indiana University as well as my own private practice. A little fun fact about me, I love making therapy fun and bringing a lot of the culture. So I'll bring up Drake, we'll play music, Tim's, you'll hear it radiating through the office, a lot of non-traditional approaches. I'm also the chair for the Midwestern Regional mental health committee. So I get to partner with Brother Winfrey and Brother Boswell and Brother Dr. Ferguson quite often. So thank you.
Out. So definitely gonna be hearing more about what Alpha is doing in the mental health community soon. I know we're rolling out some things for upcoming year, but we ain't here to talk about that. But it's good to see that the Divine Nine is definitely taking some strides in terms of stressing the importance of mental wellness in the community. So very proud to be a part of that type of climate. So with that being said, I want to get into this discussion. I think you all have waited long enough. You've seen the flyers and you're like, oh, I bet, I can't wait. So I want to start when you guys can raise your hand or however you want to just jump in there. I'm not going to tell you how, but we often hear the word self-care therapy, blah, cool. What is therapy? Like, I know there's multiple types. I know everybody talks about it, but what is therapy at its core? Like, what is it? Or do I need to? Caleb, go ahead. I see you stuck.
So I'll just roll with the spiel that I give my clients, which is at the end of the day, this is your life and you are in the driver's seat. And so I cannot make you go anywhere you want to go. This is your life. You are in control. My role as a therapist is to be your navigator. And so I say my role is to help you see some things in a different light, see some different perspectives, maybe challenge some things and challenge some behaviors. But really my role is to be that navigator to help you kind of unfold and decipher some things that have kind of been going on, because oftentimes the narrative that we have inside, we keep saying it over and over and over again, and we can only see it that one way. And so I just try to give different perspective and different insight. But at the end of the day, now that, you know, the pandemic, I can't see you walk out this office. When you get off this computer, you are in control and you can decide whether you want to roll with what we've covered and the changes that we've talked about, or you continue doing the same thing that you wanted to. But I say it's a space, I like to say my role is to help you navigate and then help you see some other things and some different perspectives and help you work through that stuff.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. I know that therapy exists in many different forms. It can be logged in on your Zoom screen in front of a therapist because, you know, the pandemic. It can be actually showing up to somebody's couch. It could be other things. So with that, I want to tailspin into a question I bet he thought was coming. Drew, what is another form of therapy that you find very beneficial?
What my field is in is very beneficial. A lot of people think that it's just mostly physical, but it's actually deals with a lot of mental as well. So for a prime example, I had a client one time. I gave him a full massage, but throughout the massage, we were just talking about any and everything. And after the session, the guy tipped me, but he didn't tip me for the massage. He tipped me more so for the conversation. You know, he said it's been a long time since he had someone to talk to in that manner. So it's like you said, going on with self-care. It's a form of therapy that most, especially as Black men, don't really take serious or don't even take into consideration that it's literally just as much as a form of therapy, which is massage therapy.
No doubt. And so what I think I'm hearing you say is that, you know, there are multiple forms of therapy. Obviously, massage therapy is one. Sitting down, having the ability to sit in front of your therapist, have those conversations and unpack those with some, I would say, preloaded questions, if you will, to help unpack some of those layers. A couple of things you hear from that is, and I want to kind of get out some of these common phrases and such before we get into the real meat and potatoes here. You often hear such things as self-care. Here's things as my mental health, my mental wellness. So I am going to pick on another therapist in the room, Brother Whiteside. Just briefly, if you could, explain what mental health is ultimately. And I know it can be defined in many different ways, but at its core, what is mental health?
For me, a lot of what it is the way that you process and make sense of the world around you. It's literally the internal world that you build from your past, present, and even somewhat of your future, as well as how do you navigate the external world, meaning interactions with other people, people that you like, people that you don't like, people that you don't even know. All that coming together really impacts how do we see things.
Big facts. Yeah, and sometimes when people ask me the question, I just simply say, hey, at the end of the day, you go to the gym, you take care of your physical health. You go to the doctor, you also take care of portions of your internal health. When you get that care for your mental health, you're doing the strengthening and the practice of strengthening your mind. And sometimes it's learning what those tools are. Other times it's being able to practice those tools. And from there, it's just kind of creating an awareness of, all right, situational awareness. I feel this way. Why? Blah, blah, blah. Go through the whole spill in your head. And next thing you know, you realize you're conditioned to actually deal with some of the things you deal with. Sometimes not. And so I'm glad that, people are starting to have those conversations more and more in 2023 now, which it's a follow-up for later. So we talked about mental health, we talked about therapy in multiple forms. Other common things you also hear about is self-care, things of that nature. So self-care ultimately is whatever things that you are practicing that help you feel better. So one of those things I used to do back in the day was go to the barbershop. And Jude, very similar to you, when you mentioned about, during some of your sessions, how people open up and talk. A lot of that happens in the barber chair too. A lot of people don't know that, but in the barbershop, it's not just us kiki and the things of that nature. That is definitely a therapeutic experience, because sometimes you're unpacking stuff with your barber that you probably won't even unpack with anybody else. So I think that is important, worth mentioning, that sometimes that weekly lineup is definitely your self-care session. So, but a lot of people think that self-care isn't for them. They think it's for women. And I want to unpack that a little bit. But before we get into all that, I know a lot of us started at different points of our journey. We talked about, being therapists, things of that nature, well, been in therapy or not. I want to ask to come to the mic one of these two young brothers. We had a conversation a couple of days ago, and it made me realize made the right decision on asking to join us. And Jordan, you kind of mentioned this in your intro about taking a gap year, if you will. I wanted to know if you would be willing to share, how did you start your therapy journey? If you will, how did you decide, like, hey, now is now?
Yeah, definitely. So the first time that I actually went to a therapy session individually, so not in a family setting, not in a group setting, not, with any other people, just me and either a therapist or a psychologist, somebody that was licensed to practice, was summer 2021. During that time, I had just finished freshman year of college, completely virtual. Been in the house at that point for over a year, not really going outside too much. I'm the oldest. I have 3 younger siblings, 3 brothers, who are all in the house, all have school, all have, their responsibilities, 2 parents in the household as well. And just having to be, serve a lot of different roles at that time, do a lot of different things, and not really having the space to do what a lot of freshmen in college probably are doing, due to the circumstances that the whole world was in. But for me, I was dealing with a lot. And during that time, I feel like a lot of people were really starting to realize a lot of things that they either hadn't dealt with prior to the pandemic, or things that were now an issue because of the pandemic, and just how those dynamics had changed. And so I realized that I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, a lot of worrying about things that happen in terms of depression and things like that, and worrying about the future, which would be the anxiety piece of it. So I really just, I had a moment right around 4th of July where I actually did not come home. I stayed out the whole night, and I caused a lot of concern for my family. They were like, "Where's Jordan?" It's nothing nothing I have ever done before. And I'm normally at home, don't go out, too much, and so I just really got to a point where I was sick of worrying about everybody else's feelings and everybody else's concerns, and I was just frustrated. So I took that opportunity to just say I'm cutting, ties with everybody in that moment for now, just because that was the only thing that was really keeping me intact in that moment. And it kind of sounds strange to do that, but for me, I was so used to people always being involved and always checking in and always making sure I was good. And to have that opportunity to finally say, I can do this on my own, and I can be okay. And you can trust that, all the things that you instilled in me all these times, all these years that I've been, under this umbrella, under this protection, it's been appreciated, but that I can also do it on my own. However, I did realize that that wasn't the healthiest way to go about it for obvious reasons. And I really did some reflecting after I came back that next morning, and had to recognize that there are changes that I needed to make fundamentally within myself to be the best version of myself. And to begin that process and to hopefully get there in due time. But yeah, that's how I got where I am today.
I appreciate you for unpacking that. I know from experience that being a young Black man to just open share in any capacity it can be rough. You may not even want to do it because you just like, they're gonna make fun of me, they're gonna think I'm weak. But I would implore and say some of the strongest Black men I've come to learn, meet with, and grow with, and politic with, they have all open shared that, hey, I've not always been okay. And that to me was like, if a man can admit that, they must be strong. Because weakness actually is us hiding behind that and not talking about it, because it's the easiest route, but in all circumstances, it's not the best case. So Jordan, I appreciate you for sharing, because you didn't have to. So much love to you, my guy. Yes. Okay. Whew, child. Before I keep getting into my own feelings, Gabriel, did you have anything you wanted to share? I know you had talked about it before.
I think just I'll be brief, so you can, we can keep filling up the questions. I'll touch on your point about self-care. I think we need to be aware of how dangerous it can be to put parameters on the forms of expression that Black men actually do indulge in, to where we only identify self-care as certain things that don't align with the individuality of some of the young men that are growing up. If you're hanging with your people and playing a game, that's a form of self-care. And there's a lot of young boys that do that. If you're going to hoop, that's a form of self-care. If you engage in the arts, that can be a form of self-care. So I think if you're trying to kind of expand the minds of young Black men, and I'm 24, by the way. So if you're trying to expand the minds of young Black men, I think it's important to tap into those areas first versus criticize the versions and the ways young Black men express themselves. When oftentimes I remember growing up, the way that me and my boys expressed ourselves kind of behind closed doors, it wasn't unhealthy, but it was the way that we felt a bond with each other. And that was late nights having conversations about college, late nights having conversations about family, late nights having conversations about relationships. It may not look the way everybody wants it to. It may not look as polished as everybody wants it to, but at the moment that we kind of put parameters and gates on the way Black men express themselves, the more we, I think, further hinder and damage men that are trying to grow into their own identity, versus encourage them that, hey, if you don't feel like you're actually caring for yourself, here are some other options, or here's a way that you can make this space that you've consistently engaged in become more of a home, become more of a bed for you, versus just a place where you drown in your emotions. It's like you can be more intentional with that. But I do think that being intentional about these conversations of self-care and mental health is important, but we do need to also highlight and identify ways Black men are also already engaging so that you can know, hey, you're already doing this. How can you be more intentional about it so that if there is an emotion you're feeling, you're aware that, hey, I'm relaxing. Because if you're not aware that you're actually relaxing, it's hard to actually get the results that you need from that relaxation. So I do think we do tend to put gates and parameters on what that looks like, and expression may not look as acceptable as other people, but I'm teaching young boys at high school right now. Sometimes being at each other at the basketball court, I was playing Uno with some kids and they were talking so much crap to each other. And then I thought it was so beautiful how at the end of it, they did this little like handshake between each other. And it's like, people that are afraid of young Black boys would look at that interaction where they're talking greasy to each other, like, oh, something's going on, I need to get somebody. But it's like, yo, these are kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are kids at the end of the day having fun. Now, of course, you want to be aware of things and make sure that you're maintaining respect, but dang, I'm going long. All right, I'm just gonna cut it out. Y'all get what I'm going.
No.
I try not to, but y'all get what I'm getting at.
Necessary day love, brother.
That part. So yeah, I mean, like you said, self-care can definitely exist in many different forms. That expression can exist in many different forms. And in fact, one of my favorite expressions that we don't do enough of, I think, is Black men, which are starting to catch trends on TikTok and all that stuff right now, is Black boy joy. We hear the phrase, we don't see it talked about as much, but it is not. I remember back in the day, I used to take pictures with a meme mug. How many of y'all remember the guys taking pictures with the meme mug? Like all that other crazy stuff, right? But recently went out of town on a beautiful trip with my family. Instead of doing a meme mug and pictures, I legit threw up some peace signs with a big smile on my head and just fully embracing like that happy version. Like, Black men, we are entitled to a level of happiness where we can just be our best genuine selves. We don't have to hide behind the mask of what society has for us and says, hey, you got to be tough to be a man, because being a man is how tough you are. It's like, nah, that's a front, and I can show you that leads to high crime rates. But you got to just be cool, be yourself, be happy. And if you can't be in those spaces where you could be happy, you're probably in the wrong spaces. So be with the people that where frolicking can be embraced. Thank you in the chat. Frolicking is a movement. If you don't know what frolicking is a movement, I guarantee if you search on any of your social media platforms, you'll see a bunch of young Black boys running through being extremely happy for no reason at all, which is perfectly fine. Self-care exists in many different forms. I have one of them right here. I know it's not part of the panel, but for me, shoes is how I escape. I literally may browse up and down timeline and say, those are cool, those are dope, those are ugly, those is cool. And that instantly makes me feel a little bit better about my day. Have other forms of self-care and therapy for myself, but for me, it's the kicks, it's the shoes. It's the one thing I put on my feet and I'm just like, I feel a little bit better. Like, I don't feel like a poo putt, so that is a thing. But as we keep going here, we talked about why self-care is important. We talked about a little bit of what therapy is. And we all have different starting points. We all may have started our journeys, if already, at different points in our lives. So one of the key things I think for therapy, if you will, and I think this is why a lot of people may either be here or here to help somebody else, is that we got to recognize either when we or other people need help. So I'm gonna ask the question, how do you know when to start therapy? Like, how do you know where to start that journey at? And this may be more of an ask of my therapist on the call. How do you, when people come to you, what are some of the main reasons they're like, hey, you know what? This is the reason I came. Or when you started your journey, this is the reason I started my therapy journey. Anybody want to go first?
So I'll say this. I think the funny thing about therapy is that 9 times out of 10, what the person initially goes for is not what we end up covering. But oftentimes people notice that, I've been out of whack, or I haven't been quite feeling myself for some time, and taking that initiative to go to therapy is a huge step and a great step and a great first step. But what I find is that a lot of times what people initially think the issue is, or initially think what's bothering them, as we get to digging deeper and kind of figuring some things out, we really start unpacking a lot of different other issues and working on that stuff as well.
Big facts. The reason I went was not the reason I needed. So I agree. Michael, you had something to add?
I agree with Brother Boswell. I'll say 9.5 times out of 10. When people come to see me, very seldom do we stay on the topic. I literally have people who come to me for grief after a recent loss of a loved one, and then we'll start talking about anger. We'll start talking about all the anxiety that has so much to do with so many other relationships, not just the one with the deceased. So for me, a lot of times it's really about, and I think I saw somebody put in the chat, feeling off. I'm not feeling like myself. Or you know what? Sometimes I just want to grow. Nothing has to be wrong. I want to make this clear. Nothing has to be wrong for you to come to therapy. You can go to the doctor for a 6-month checkup and nothing's wrong. You can come to your therapist. Matter of fact, Brother Boswell, correct me if I'm wrong, we love talking about the good stuff too. We want to celebrate you. It's a big misconception. We want to celebrate you.
And to piggyback off of that, a lot of times things may be intense, and you may start off like, we may be seeing each other weekly. But the goal is to kind of ease that off. And so the good thing is my clients who I see once a month or bi-weekly, that's because things are going well. And so those 1-month check-ins are typically checking in to say, this is what's going well, this is what I'm still working on, this is how I've been progressing, this is the tools that we talked about, the behavior changes we talked about, and this is how things have been going. And you say the same thing that I say to my clients. I use the dentist and the doctor as an example. The same way you go to your dentist every 6 months for a cleaning is the same thing that you can do with your therapist. You don't have to be in trauma. You don't have to be at rock bottom to go to a therapist. It could be something a little bit wrong, and you just want to kind of get that in check. So you don't have to wait till you rock bottom and feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel to make that call.
And you don't have to prepare for a therapy session either.
Exactly.
You don't have to figure out the 6 or 7 problems that you want to talk to. I mean, some people, if it helps you stay organized, that's a different conversation. But I literally tell from my therapy approach, I literally just say, just come. If you just come, we can figure out the rest. But I just need you to show up. That's all I'm asking. And we'll take it from there.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, I'm gonna interrupt that by saying, you don't come prepared to therapy unless your therapist gave you homework. That has happened too many times. And I'm like, I didn't do that homework, doc. Listen, I didn't do it. But it requires some work that we got to do as well and prepare for ourselves for certain sessions. But yes, to start, just go show up.
Can I speak on that more as a youngin' a little bit?
Yes, absolutely.
So I wanted to say that 2 things. One, I'll say, like, for instance, this year, or at least the way that I approach therapy is making sure that I am consistently, once again, like you said, physical health, just consistently practicing in a professional perspective versus just kind of the social perspective. But this year, my family were dealing with some very emergency. I had a brother that went missing for a period of time, and having to be on calls consistently, having to figure things out. Can you?
It's better now.
Am I good? Okay, sorry. I was saying I had a brother that went missing, and having to be on calls with family and having to figure that stuff out. And things are, I'd say, okay now, but having the understanding that just because I survived something doesn't mean I'm good. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean it didn't affect me. So me personally, because I'm trying to be the healthiest person for myself, but also I want to build relationships and I want to be kind of more reliable in these spaces. I want to engage in therapy to have that space to kind of just get things, not necessarily get things off my chest, but get outside perspective so that I could possibly sharpen things that I'm not necessarily paying attention to. So it really is kind of a self-improvement process for me sometimes. And also I will speak to some men that may feel like opening up to their friend, because I have friends like that opening up to your friends is a burden. Like you can be a burden. One, that's not true. But if you do feel like that, I do think therapy is a space to where you really can have somebody that I'd say is, you know, hopefully pretty unbiased, and also it's their job, right? You know, so you don't have to feel that feeling of, oh, I'm being burdensome, because that's a real feeling. It may not be rational, but it's a feeling because at the end of the day, you care about the people around you. But sometimes we allow our minds to not realize that the people around us care about us as well. You know, so that's kind of what I wanted to touch upon, particularly from, you know, 24-year-old perspective.
I just want to say something real quick around the therapist. Looking at my own personal perspective, just in case that therapist doesn't work out, because oftentimes a lot of people think that they're gonna go in there and they're gonna go like, yeah, you made the call, you made the appointment, and you're gonna go in there and in 1 hour we're gonna be fixed. And it's like it took you it took you more than an hour to get this way. It's gonna take more than an hour to kind of undo and to kind of see those things. The other thing that I also want to say in regards to that is that if you and a therapist don't mesh, that is okay. That just means you may need to find another therapist. That does not mean stop going to therapy and therapy doesn't work. And since we got Black men in here, the exact example that I use is if you go to a barber and he give you a janky cut, you just gonna stop going to that barber. You're not gonna stop getting your hair cut. You just know not to sit in that chair. And that's the same example that I give. If you're not feeling that vibe, if you're not feeling like that person isn't culturally understanding, if you're not feeling like it's just not working out, that doesn't mean you have to stay there and suffer through it. But I'll also say that doesn't mean quit and give up on therapy. That just means that we may need to find somebody else.
Whew. I am glad you said that, because that definitely tailspins to another question about selection. So some of us have primary care physicians. If you don't, this is a wellness check. That's your homework. Make sure y'all got a primary care physician in addition to a therapist. It's hard to determine who is a good fit. Like, how do we know who a good fit is? One of the laws that I use is actually advice I got from my spouse. And they ultimately told me, I'm not going to give you the exact phrase, etc., but they look like they go to the club and listen to the same music that I will listen to. So we can have those discussions. We talked about Brother Whiteside when you mentioned you do vibe checks in terms of you may play music during some of your therapy session. It helps relate more. You want somebody that's relatable, right? But how do you determine, you know, who's a good therapist for you, a good counselor, good coach, good psychologist, things of that nature? Like, is it race, gender, religion? Like, what are some factors to consider when you are selecting somebody for your first or your future therapy sessions?
I think it goes to like what one of them said. It's more so someone you can relate to. Like I said, being a Black man, you will want to go to someone who can have a cultural understanding of what you're going through versus someone who doesn't really necessarily have that understanding. Okay, it may be harder for you to get your point across. It may be hard for you to get a valid, you know, opinion or understanding when they cannot relate.
So culturally responsible is what I'm hearing you say.
Right.
Jordan, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think, however, it's important to not get so caught up in just the cultural aspect of it, because therapy, it's a wide range of different forms of therapy. There's a in just within talk therapy in itself, there's not just, oh, you sit to somebody and you have a conversation. There's different ways that psychologists or therapists or licensed social workers are all trained in different ways to deal with trauma, to deal with people who are neurodivergent, for example, people who have ADHD or autism or dyslexia. So there's different ways to approach it, and I think that as much as we want to look at like, oh, how do we look on the outside, and making sure that somebody else will also understand how we look on the outside, it's important to also make sure they understand who we are on the inside, what our hearts are like, what our minds are like, and somebody that's going to be able to really address the things that you have going on and help you become a better version of yourself in whatever ways that you want to improve. So I think that's probably the most important thing when you're dealing with therapy, is making sure that the type of therapy or the type of therapist or psychologist, like I said, or psychiatrist fits what your goals are, because not everybody wants the same thing, or not everybody needs the same thing in terms of treatment.
Most definitely. One of my favorite rap lyrics is one of my favorite artists, Jay-Z. He mentioned that we all screwed because we didn't have the tools. I'm trying to fix it. And thank you, Dr. Cunningham, for dropping this in the chat. There is a PDF in the chat right now that says questions to ask when looking for a therapist. This is a resource provided by Black Mental Wellness. So before you get up out of here, make sure you download that in case you are struggling to figure out what to ask a potential therapist. It's like an interview. You got to choose it like a dating relationship. How do I know you're going to be down for me and my things? And it's okay to ask some of these questions. So you got to be comfortable with choosing them like you would choose a potential spouse or partner, et cetera. So they're going to be a part of your life for some point of time. So thank you for that, Dr. C. I appreciate you as always. There's a couple more questions I do want to get to, but I also do know that there are questions that you all may have. I do realize that we may not get to all of them, but I do want to make sure we provide space to try to get to some of them. So before I get to you guys' questions, please enter them in the chat. We will get to them as soon as possible. There are two things I wanted to ask. We talked about selecting already. Before I get to my last question I have for the panelists, before we get to the Q&A, there's a couple different types of people we typically talk to. We hear about therapists, we hear about counselors, we hear about coaches, psychiatrists, psychologists. Ain't they just the same? Like, ain't they the same person? Like a person that's a coach, just a therapist, psychologist? No, I'm tripping. Sorry, my bad. I'm tripping because I don't know what I'm talking about, which is fine. So if somebody, and again, I don't know who can cover what, we kind of talk about therapists a lot during this session. I do realize that we may have to have some follow-up discussions about more phrases and things you'll hear along this journey for you. But the difference of a coach, a counselor, and psychiatrist, things of that nature, can anyone help break down what that is so we can stop trying to use them interchangeably as a community? Oh, I asked a tough question. My bad.
No, so psychiatry is going to come from a medical standpoint. So I'm a counselor. My letters after my name are LLPC, Limited Licensed Professional Counselor here in the state of Michigan. A psychiatrist, though, is going to come to you from a medical diagnosing standpoint, because a psychiatrist is a medical doctor. So they're looking at your symptoms in some cases and saying, what type of treatment, what prescription are we going to use to treat this disorder? And that psychiatrist is typically going to be used for more severe mental illnesses. Your life coach is just that. They're doing the opposite of what my instructor told me in grad school, which is we don't give advice and tell people how to live their life. That's exactly what a life coach is doing to a certain extent. They're working with you, they're working with your goals, and they're kind of giving you advice and guiding you in regards to what you may want to do. Counseling, as I said earlier, I'm about helping you see things from a different perspective. You are in the driver's seat. So I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here to heal you. I'm here to help you in that process, but you're really healing yourself. I'm just helping you along that journey and helping you, like I say, understand some things, see some things, challenge you. And that's also something I want to say, because oftentimes you'll see people leave their therapist because they have a therapist that calls them on their BS and challenges them for that. And so some people don't like that. I'm gonna call you out. But we come, the counseling perspective is more, it is self-help on your end, but it is us helping you through that process. So you're not doing it on your own. I think I covered that pretty solid.
If I can add, so just the way that I like to teach it, especially to the students that ask me, your psychiatrist, like Brother Boswell said, has an MD. So that's their medical. Then if you go to your psychologist, that is a doctoral level mental health professional that can also do a lot of your ADHD testing. They can diagnose for autism, different things of that. So they're going to be more diagnostic, and they're also going to focus more on looking at it from a medical model without the medication. Now, a psychotherapist, which is also a word that you hear thrown around a lot, psychotherapist and a counselor, they can be the same. So that is now a master's level clinician that really focuses on, as Brother Boswell said, reorganizing and helping you process through various perspectives what's going on in your life. And then you have a life coach who really helps you to feel more motivated, to kind of literally like a sports coach, help you get back in the game in terms of mental health and really, really focus on what can you do. So they're more like your cheerleader, and together we work together as a really good team, but you have to figure out, where are you? Mental health is a spectrum, and it's not always a spectrum like this. It's actually very horizontal, where people are constantly shifting back and forth, back and forth. So understand what is the need, and then you can identify who can meet that need most efficiently and effectively.
Definitely. Thank you for those breakdowns. Apparently Justin appreciates the breakdowns, so we see. One of the other comments that came, this is more so about the selection piece. So honestly, when I was looking for my therapist, I was only interested in speaking with either a Black man or Black woman. I did not want to pay someone telling me that I'm being sensitive when it comes to racial issues. And yes, I do think that's valid of a description, because I can see in today's culture how we are looked at as too emotional while playing Uno or space, things of that nature, or sensitive about issues that affect us when we're tired of seeing it in the media, such as one of the reasons I chose to step into getting therapy and some type of assistance when I had to deal with the loss of Kobe Bryant from I still call it the worst nap I ever taken in my life. Waking up about news about Breonna Taylor, about George Floyd, things of that nature. And on top of just all of my things I personally had going on in my actual life, those things affected me. And I was like, you know what? If I think this is our safe space, and I say this, if I go to a white therapist and they tell me I'm being too emotional and that don't concern me about George Floyd, about Breonna Taylor, about Ahmaud Arbery, about Kobe Bryant, I'm probably gonna need to call the cops. Just saying, let's be real, because that hit harder than Kobe Bryant passing was like one of our OG cousins passing, let's be real. So it is what it is. But before I get into the Q&A, I know there are people that may have had or are typing those questions up as we speak. So we all got our boys, we got our homies, we got our ecosystems, we got the fellas in our community that we want to advocate for. We want them to be good. We may have even lately seen they weren't their best selves, things of that nature. And I've actually been in situations recently where I had to kind of shrug somebody and say, hey, listen, you need to unpack that. I can listen. I guess I'm a coach. Can I be a life coach? Pick me, maybe a little bit. All right, cool. I'm gonna ask later. The question is, how do I tell or advise somebody in my bro circle, if you will, that they may need to either practice self-care and or seek therapy. And to that, can that be offensive? So anybody that would like to, I mean, anybody. Jordan, I seen you first.
I'll go ahead. So I would say it's definitely not a easy conversation to have with most people that you come in contact with, just because of the unfortunate stigmas that have been placed on, therapy and talking about feelings and being emotional, or as people would call it, being sensitive, being soft, all those different things that we touched on earlier. And I would say that the way that has worked best for me is just becoming more comfortable with those ideas myself, being more comfortable expressing myself for who I am, and being comfortable with the fact that I have gone to therapy. I've had struggles. I've done all these different things and had all these different experiences, but I can reflect on those things. I can talk about those things pretty openly if people want to have those conversations, and just let them know that as unnormal as we try to make it, it is normal to experience these things. So first off, I just be an example. That's the easiest thing that I can do. That's the least stressful thing that I can do, because putting my all into convincing somebody that they need to do something, similar to what Caleb was saying, you can't make somebody do something that they don't want to do. They're either going to do it or they're not going to, and you can play a part in influencing them, but I think it all starts with yourself from an individual standpoint, and being the best version of yourself and being there for other people and letting them know, like, I'm here. This is what I'm doing. You can invite them along and say, hey, I'm going to this thing. Do you want to come? Or, things like that. But I think you really have to understand that person and where they are in their journey as well, too, because a lot of times that can be a trigger for somebody, telling them what they need to do or what you think they should do. If they're used to that in a trauma sense as well, throughout their lives, you being that kind of person as well, even if it's from a good place, can be just as harmful.
Jordan, I appreciate you, man, first and foremost. Just wanted to say that, but I think that if I was having a conversation with my boys and I recognized that one of them needed therapy, I think I'd first evaluate what's the extremity of the situation, and because I don't think you want to approach conversations of therapy when it's needed from a perspective of you need therapy. I think we often talk at Black men versus talk to. So I think approaching what is your relationship with the individual that you're with, first and foremost, how do y'all go about accountability communication, and have y'all had that? 'Cause sometimes it can cause somebody to shut down if you come at them a certain type of way. So, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Some people receive different forms of coaching, different forms of help. So I think the priority that you should have is how can you get this person to realize that you're a safe space? You know what I'm saying? And that depends on what your relationship looks like with this person. What do y'all do that are healthy practices that maintains the relationship, the brotherhood that y'all have, and trying to tap into those spaces so that there's an understanding that in the midst of this storm, you have a brother on your side, and this brother is saying, hey, I'm here, and it's not that I'm not enough, it's that there's other resources that can help you get through this storm. So I think the most important thing is prioritizing how you can help somebody, because you don't want to jump a step and push somebody away from the safe space that you are. You don't need to always hammer something into a Black man. You know what I mean? Like, you don't. We're human beings, and human beings will react to certain things very much so the same. And just because we've been through hard times or been conditioned through hard times, that doesn't mean responding hard is always the wise decision. That'll break something sometimes. So how can you use your discernment, and I think your relationship, to really make sure that the person that's your homie, like my homie, I'm thinking of him right now, it's like, if you're going through something, first and foremost, I'm a safe space to where stuff has happened. He's just called me and going, yo, you're the one person I can talk to. And then it's like, if we have that relationship, if we have that space, then it's like, hey, I do think this is the next step that could help you with this, you know, but that would be my response or how I would approach it, you know.
Appreciate that, those mindsets too, especially those viewpoints. Any others?
I would say, just to add on, and thank you both for sharing those perspectives. I would just add, from a person who is the one contemplating therapy, or maybe just the one in pain or suffering, I would think, one, self-awareness is always going to be paramount. So the more self-aware you are, the easier this process, or at least the more productive this process is going to be. But really just think about, if I feel like I have to constantly vent, or I feel like I have so many things to vent about, even just checking in with your body, if it's like, man, breathing seems harder, you know, getting up out of the bed seems harder. If life seems so much harder than what it's been, easy sign, hey, maybe we need to talk to somebody. Now, as a support person, if you notice that this person is constantly calling, constantly, you know, leaning on you, like Gabriel said, it's not that you can't be that safe space, but it might be time to open up that door. And Brother Boswell, I don't know if you had this experience too, but when people know that you're a therapist, they love coming to you. Oh, I'm in the free therapy. I got homies right now that they will call me in a heartbeat. And for me, it's like, okay, that's great. But here's the thing, I'm going to be a touch base, because the thing you have to realize, we're human too. And I like to make the running joke in my household is, when that name badge comes off, it's no longer billable hours, meaning I'm back being Mike, right? I'm not Mike the therapist anymore. So sometimes that's the easiest way to say, hey, maybe let's talk to somebody professionally. If you like talking to me, why don't you talk to somebody on a more regular basis? And it takes the pressure off of you.
Big facts. It's okay to respect their time by booking an appointment.
And I also say one more thing.
Yes.
I don't think having self-awareness of your emotionality or your mental state makes you better than the next man. I think Mike, you brought up a good example of how it's more of a horizontal spectrum, and we're all on a journey, and it's not about being higher than others. Some people are farther than others. So what I mean by that is, if you do know better, do better, do right by the people in your lives. And that means that leading by example sometimes is taking the step of having certain conversations that you might not bring up. And this could be even on a goofy level. Like I've noticed that with my boy, there's certain things that I just started bringing up that I wanted to talk about more. And now we've just started sharing more things, and we already were very vulnerable, but we've just been sharing more things about where we're at when it comes to, I'm doing this in life. I'm audiobooking this now because this happened. Like, we're just talking about little things. Oh, I'm trying to do this today. I think this is how I'm going to go about today, kind of turning off my social media because I know I'm checking it more often. Like, just if you are in a space to where you're aware that you can be a bit more vulnerable than somebody that you're close with, I think taking that step first often helps open that door. So
Most definitely. Appreciate that mindset too. We could probably have this conversation all night, honestly, but I want to give time to answer some of the questions that came in through the chat. Again, if you all see it by now, there is a link to a SurveyMonkey survey. Please take the time out if you have not done that yet, or make sure you do it before you not open the link and log out. So a couple questions came in. For the sake of conciseness, I'm going to read, I think there's a good two we can get into. One of them is, I'm just read verbatim. So thank you all for your transparency, vulnerability, and wisdom. How do we encourage young Black men, adolescents, and teens to engage and be open to therapy without making them feel like something is wrong with them? Sure, let's say you go first.
All right. I think it goes to the leading, leading as an example. A lot of the youth view their favorite person, in the media, such as their rapper, their favorite actor or actress. So I think for us is actually being intentional about leading, life with purpose. Being intentional about it. If we want the youth to do better, we have to give them an example to do better when it comes to their mental health.
Mm. So what I'm hearing you say is one of two things. One of three things, because I know that sometimes the message is in the music. So you're telling me that one, we either need to become rappers, or two, be the role model example of what we want our young people to see and be about.
I mean, you can do both, but no, yeah, it's it's definitely just being the role model. Back in the day, we grew up in the neighborhood. You have, what we call the OGs we looked up to. No matter what things they were getting into, they made sure that the youth was out of it, or the youth was secure in a way. So it's just going back to just being a role model for them.
Big facts. Well, there goes my rap career, but thanks for providing that clarity. Any other answers to that question?
So I would say reframe therapy, not as a means to fix you, but as a way of reorganizing your story. Therapy is not about fixing, it's about reorganizing. Tell your story. Teach young Black boys, hey, you know what? Tell your story. If you frame it as that, it makes it a lot more enjoyable. And now we're just simply saying, hey, we want to help you organize that story. Give it meaning, give it purpose, give it life.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that, my bad, go ahead.
I'll let you go, but I want to add a point. That point is, it's never too early or too late to foster ecosystems. And those ecosystems can be for whatever you need them to be. It can be a sneaker group. I know I have a sneaker group. We talk about sneakers all the time. It's fine. I have it for that reason. I have my space of like my family space. We could talk about family things right then and there. Some of them cross mingle, some of them coexist, and I also have a space where I can do my check-ins. How are you doing? Are you sleeping okay? Anything keeping you up at night? These are some of the actual questions that I ask people in my circle. How's you eating? What you been eating like? Why you eating that way? It may seem very silly to ask these questions, but what I've learned in finding out how to ask, is someone okay? Is how to ask them if they're okay without asking them, are you okay? Because if you ask somebody, are you okay? You are pointing that something's wrong. And that's what, like you mentioned, what we want to try to avoid by asking some of those questions. So create some of those ecosystems. We can talk more about what that looks like. We actually have a few episodes on the Mental Matters podcast talking about why ecosystems are important. Y'all can go figure out which episode, and by instance, listen to all of them. But I think that ecosystems are very important in terms of making sure that young people, old people, whatever you want to call people, have the space to talk about the things they should talk about to make them feel like they're okay, and sometimes when they're not. Gabriel, you had a comment, and then I want to get to the next question.
I just wanted to say, working at Anacostia High School, I'm in a super under-resourced, segregated, just traumatic area with students that have really been through stuff. And we have this cuts and conversations where most of the Black male teachers, guests, and students is like round table. You get a line up, and we're also having conversation. And things that I've realized not only from my class, but that is all of these kids want to do better. All of these kids are dreamers. Sometimes they stifle their own dream because they don't have the confidence in themselves, or their environment is affecting them, or their household is stifling their dreams and their ability to even imagine. So I think connecting them with mentors, not that you think are great, that really resonate with them, that are doing the practices, it is healthy, because a lot of our young Black men need that shoulder to lean on. And that's also, even if they don't, because I think we stereotype the identity of young Black men. Like, not every young Black man has, just because they don't have their pants hanging below their belt means that they're okay. It's like, this is a culture, we all are a part of it, all share different shades of this beautiful melanin. and we're all under certain conditions. Like, let's have a love based on the individuality of people and meet their needs. So I do think that mentorship really is one of the directions that helps somebody say, hey, this is somebody that is going a direction I want to go in. Let me connect them, this young Black man, to that person, because these young cats are dreamers, you know, and that's how I think I'd approach it.
Most definitely. I realize we are getting more questions than we have time for, so this is going to be fun. I am trying to figure out the ones that we can get the biggest bang for our buck. Let's see. One of them being, and I think this kind of coincides with another, so this works. I'm biased too, so work with me. The question is, how do we melt the ice and engage the older Black male population towards prioritizing their mental health and wellness?
Not an easy answer, but I think from what I do from a personal standpoint, it's just really about reaching out to the community. I saw somebody say like community events. I've spoken on panels, I've spoken on all kinds of things just to normalize that therapy is normal, and to get that message out there, because for a lot of people, they just need to hear it. For some people, it works if they're hearing it from somebody that looks like them. And I think it's really just about trying to get that message out there. So I know on my social media, I post a lot of mental health things. I use the hashtag therapy is normal. I just try to talk about it in my personal life like it is a normal thing. For free, volunteer, whatever. I'm always down to get in front of our people to talk about it. And that's one of the things that I do on my end. Because I recognize that as a culture, we are what goes on in this house stays in this house. So how can I expect you to come and sit on this couch and open up everything to me? So I think it's important that we use our space to just normalize it and put it out there and let it be known that it's not some crazy thing where you don't have to be, like I say, a rock bottom, but it's normal. So it's really just about putting that message out there. So if you can strike up a conversation while volunteering, if you can throw something on your social media. From an academic standpoint, you know, the counseling office, the advising office is usually seen as a terrible place. You go there because your grades are bad. You go there because I'm in trouble, blah, blah, blah. So one of the things I do at the college, I'm always down to volunteer at the table. I'm always down to put myself out in the college community in a different way so that you can see that we're here to assist and we're here to help. And it's not just a place that you can go when you're in trouble, but it's to change those perspectives and to help people change that mindset. And so it's really just about being an example, like we said earlier, but then just trying to put out some positive information.
Agreed. Someone commented and said the OGs, if you will, need to understand the importance of mental health as well. Many of us have stuffed things of the past and don't know how to express themselves. I believe sometimes we refer to it as what goes on in this house stays in this house, or that's family business, things of that nature. But there's a reason that's family business. Well, why y'all want to keep that in the family so much? Maybe it's time to get it out the family. Maybe it's time to unpack the family, right? Future conversations. I think that needs to happen. I want to get into one of these last ones. And this says, this is how we help others. So how do we do that based on our experiences, such as is it volunteering, community service, one-on-one or group conversations? I'm not sure exactly what's meant by that question, but what I have learned is that maybe, especially because this is May, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, what I have noticed is that one of the ways that people tend to deal with some mental health concerns for themselves is to get out and volunteer, is to actually go out and help other people, help with community causes, things of that nature. Maybe it's run events, whatever it is, even park cleanups. Some of those things help you even feel better because you're giving to a greater cause. So that can be just a way you kind of you may have to pull yourself out of a rut at times and really get to a better feeling than you are in this current moment versus your future moment. But I want to try to get to the root of the question. You said, how do we help others based on our experiences? So we all may be at different experience levels. and we may be at different parts of our journey. So how would you advise just simply helping out your fellow man, if you will?
This is gonna be my last thing. I'm gonna be quiet. So I go to therapy. I'm honest about it. That's one of the issues, that so many people go, but they treat it like a secret. They don't want nobody to know. So they've made the step, they're doing the process, but they treating it like a secret. And I think one of the things that has helped the people around me is when I start being honest about me going. And when I said I go, and this is where I go on Saturdays, and this is what I'm kind of covering, I was just kind of open about it. And I think that if you're open and honest about it and don't treat it like some kind of negative thing, and that it can really be a positive thing, because the same way, we talked earlier, you don't shy away from the fact that you have a dentist appointment. You don't shy away from the fact that you went to the doctor. So why is it a big secret that you went to a therapist? And so it's to kind of help remove, like somebody said, remove the stigma, is normalizing it and going, yo, I go. And I think that's it. That's a huge thing.
Big facts. I think Dr. Cunningham suggests that we have an event called Cuts and Conversations. I think we got to figure out how to get some of my favorite barbers in the same room to talk about these things. Absolutely. Any others? Any other feedback? Want to make sure
I was going to come at it from a different angle.
Please.
How do we help others based on our experiences coming from? How do we not project our trauma, you know what I'm saying, onto others, but truly like actually help them from the wisdom of our experience? And I think that like two approaches that I've had is, once again, some people, I grew up in a pretty tough, I'd say, like area, but also at a school that really, it's like when I reflect on all the Black men that graduated from my class or went on to college, there's literally only 2 or 3 that I can think of. And there's many that really aren't doing too well. And that's just a consequence of life, but that doesn't make them any worse. And the reality is, like, I grew up with these dudes. So there's a humanization I have of them, you know what I mean? To where if people on the outside looking in saw them, they would look at them either as a statistic or a stereotype. Whereas, this brother was on my basketball team. I've seen him smile. I've seen him laugh. I've met his folks. This is a human being. So how do I take the wisdom that I could take from my experience to help others is something that's how I approach situations like that. But things that have directly happened to me, I'll go to poetry. Poetry's like the way I go about writing, tackling expression. There's a lot of things that have happened to me. And sometimes when in poetry spaces, we feel like we only have to write about the immediate pain that we're in. And it's like, no, that's not the case. So it's almost like, because I've healed from this situation doesn't mean I can't write about it, doesn't mean I can't tell this story, doesn't mean it can't help other people, because it is a story at the end of the day about an experience. So to what Caleb said, I think honesty is the biggest priority when it comes to experience, and not really just focusing on like, hey, this is to help you, just being like, hey, this happened to me. And perspective is sometimes the best medicine when it comes to anybody that's dealing with situations in life, so I guess that's like a loaded answer, but I hope that does help, just to
Absolutely. I see some things in the chat I think will ultimately help answer that too. One of them, this is about Robert. I think one of the best ways is through the life changes that we make the people around us recognize, and we want to know what we are doing to make those changes and influence them to want to make the same changes. I'm just kind of being that example. Another person mentioned that showing or walking through the process with someone helps them overcome the challenges and hurdles around fear, uncertainty, and shame over lack of knowledge around the process. And one of my favorites, and Julie, you mentioned this too in the chat. Whew, child, listen, I still do this to this day. Till this day, I still do this because tomorrow is not promised. Kobe Bryant's passing actually causes my dad to send the "I love you" text for the first time ever. I come from a world where my dad never had a chance to send me text messages. He was that much older. It is what it is. But he also made a point to let me know that he loved me whenever he felt like it. And I thought it was the weirdest thing. I'm like, who is this man telling me he loved me? My dad, right? Knowing now, that hits so much harder. You know, just knowing that a man cares for my life, especially my own father. When I've had uncles, etc., say things like, hugs are for sissies. I stopped associating with that part of my family tree and started to get that family engagement from friends. And so I say that to say, the beautiful thing about the world that we live in 2023 is a lot of that interaction, that family presence and things of that nature doesn't necessarily have to come from your family tree. It can be your friends, it can be your coworker, maybe. It can be your coworkers, it can be people you may have went to school with, that you went through the trenches with, I call it. And some of those relationships turn family. And so those may even become your ecosystems, fake people. So, and that's perfectly fine and normal. So again, we can probably have this conversation all night. Again, I want to implore you all, if you have not already, to please fill out the survey in the chat. That's going to help us with future events, things of that nature. I want to thank each and every last one of our panelists, not just our therapists on the line. You could have been anywhere else, but you definitely just chose to sit here with us and share your gems. So I want to give one last roundtable, if you will, of how people can reach out to you, whether that be your emails. I'm not going to say phone numbers. Your emails, if you have social media, things of that nature, or websites or resources, they reach out to you. So I'm going to go around the horn. And I'm going to start with you.
Okay, you can reach out. My email is judebarthel25, JUDEBARTHEL25 @gmail.com. You can reach me on Facebook as Jude B, JUDE space B space LMT. Instagram is Bearded Shinobi, is BEARDED_SHINOBI. And I also put it down in the chat.
I was going to mention, after you do that, please put it in the chat. If you have time before you announce it, please put it in the chat. But I want to make sure everybody has a chance to go through that as well. Jordan, can people reach out to you? How can they reach out to you, man?
Yeah, so I put my Instagram in the chat. So it's Jordy, JORDY BZY. Follow me on Instagram. I see it pretty regularly. Or I also put my email in there as well. And that's Jordan, JORDAN, the letter Y, number 0 @outlook.com.
Perfect. Michael, how can people reach you, man?
So easy to find. You can use our email, reclaimingroyalty21@gmail.com. You can also go to our website, reclaimingroyalty.net. I'll also put our business number, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok in the chat as well. So thank you.
No doubt. Gabriel.
Hey, y'all, I'll put a list of like a bunch of things, but the main thing is my poetry page is at Gabriel's Poetry. I also put my my business emails or my personal email. My personal page is Bring Tears to Joy if you do want to reach out, but definitely recommend my poetry page. Once again, right now I'm publishing a book and also trying to plan an event around celebrating and honoring Black fathers around Father's Day weekend. So things like that you can tune into through those pages, and I also have an email list that I've subscribed to. So please feel free to reach out. I'm open. I'm not big-headed. I'd love to hear from anybody. And yeah, I appreciate you all being here tonight.
Jeff, Caleb.
All right. So again, thanks everybody for being here tonight. FB is my name, so Caleb Boswell. Talented 10th 06 on Instagram. And then I left my counseling email, which is counselorcsb@gmail.com.
Definitely. I am putting our information here as well. It is a lot, but I do want to make sure you guys can connect with anybody you heard from that you may have identified more with, things of that nature. Again, it is important that we normalize Black mental health. It's not just a t-shirt I'm wearing because it's cool. I literally stand by it every single day, and I'm always trying to provide space for my people that may simply need space providing. So again, I do want to thank you all for joining. As far as some upcoming events, things of that nature, things we have on the docket with dates to be determined. I do know that we want to have a follow-up conversation during the month of July, which is mental health awareness, Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, centered around running your race. So some topics that Black men are and are not talking about in or outside of therapy. And then finally, one of the other conversations is the marathon continues, your post-therapy checklist, because, you know, we all finished therapy and we're done. We're all fixed and good, right? No. So expect those things to come. And in order to make sure you're seeing that, make sure that you are following, before I give any more shameless plugs, make sure that you are following Black Mental Wellness on your social media pages, especially Instagram, because a lot of updates happen there. Make sure you check out the website as well. Black Mental Wellness is it .com, .org. I don't want to get the domain wrong. I'll let Dr. Cunningham correct me. But make sure if you go to the IG, all the information is going to be on that Instagram page as well. So make sure you do that. Thank you for putting that in the chat. Appreciate you. Again, this event was co-hosted by the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated Midwestern Region. Make sure you follow them as well at Alpha Midwest. You'll be able to find them on social media pages as well. Facebook, Instagram, things of that nature for more information about what the fraternity is doing in your local community, especially in the Midwest area. I can be found on social media, probably when I shouldn't be at times, but you can definitely follow the podcast I mentioned, the Mental Matters Podcast, at Mental Matters Podcast. The website is mentalmatterspod.com. That will be shared in the link in the chat as well. And then finally, my personal IG is Rich Loves Kicks, and you'll probably see why as soon as you get there. It is true what they say. I do love kicks. So with that, I want to close by saying, make sure that you share this. This was recorded, so it will be shared eventually to the masses. Thank you all for showing up, giving your feedback, your time, your questions. And in short, life is short. So make sure you go to therapy. And of course, buy the shoes. I say buy the shoes. Just buy them. It's cool. Happy Mental Health Awareness Month. Do something to take care of yourself. And for more things, Black Mental Wellness or Mental Health Wellness Month related, make sure you follow those pages because things will be shared as well. That's it. Have a good night.